in our eyes, you're already dead. The crystal flute in my hand trembled as I stood frozen behind the kitchen door. My heart stopped. My breath caught. Time itself seemed to pause as those 6 words, spoken in my son's voice, echoed through my mind. Those weren't words a child should ever say about a parent. Not my child, not my Justin. But there he stood in my dining room, speaking to his cousin, completely unaware I could hear every syllable. The casual cruelty in his tone suggested he'd thought this way for some time. The worst part? His wife Ashley laughed after he said it, a sound that cut through me like a physical wound. I'd spent my entire adult life reading people and anticipating their needs. It was how I built my catering empire from nothing after my husband died. Yet somehow, I'd completely misread the 2 people who should have been closest to me. The party decorations surrounding me, the ones I'd carefully selected for my 55th birthday celebration, suddenly seemed like cruel props in a play where I'd misunderstood my role. While I thought I was the beloved mother being honored, I was actually the obstacle being tolerated until they could claim their inheritance. How does a mother process such a revelation? How does anyone move forward after hearing their child has emotionally buried them while they still draw breath? What I did next would not only save my life's work, but reshape my understanding of family, loyalty, and self-worth forever. My story isn't simply about betrayal, though the betrayal cut deeper than any knife. It's about what happens when you're forced to see the truth about those you love most, and the extraordinary strength you can find when you have nothing left to lose. My name is Rebecca Hall, and this is how I discovered my son and daughter-in-law had declared me dead while I was still very much alive, and what I chose to do about it. At 54, I thought I understood the rhythm of my life. I'd weathered the worst storm imaginable 12 years earlier when my husband Daniel collapsed from an aneurysm, leaving me widowed with a 16-year-old son and a mountain of debt. The modest catering business we'd started together barely generated enough income to keep our lights on, let alone pay a mortgage and fund college dreams. Those early days of grief blurred together, waking before dawn to prep food, meeting clients during Justin's school hours, balancing books late into the night after helping with homework. I remember Justin finding me asleep at the kitchen table more times than I care to admit, spreadsheets stuck to my cheek, calculator still clutched in my hand. Hall's premier events wasn't just a business, it was our lifeline. Each successful event meant another month we could stay in our home. Each new client brought us one step closer to stability. Through persistence and countless 18-hour days, I transformed our struggling operation into the most sought-after catering service in 3 counties. Justin witnessed this transformation firsthand. He folded napkins beside me on weekends, learned to make my signature pastries in high school, and helped modernize our booking system during college breaks. I believed he understood the value of what we'd built together. When he graduated with his marketing degree and brought home Ashley, I welcomed her warmly. "She reminds me of you," Justin had said, words I once took as the highest compliment. Before sharing what happened next, I want you to know this isn't easy. Family secrets usually stay buried for a reason. But I'm breaking my silence because the lessons I learned might help someone else recognize warning signs I missed. If you're watching this, please click the like button and subscribe. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Perhaps leave that in the comments. I read everyone. Now, let me take you back to the beginning of the end, or what my son and daughter-in-law hoped would be my end. Before I continue, I'd like to ask a favor. What I'm about to share took courage, more courage than I knew I possessed. If my story resonates with you or teaches you something valuable, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps others find this video who might need to hear it too. Family betrayal cuts deep. It reshapes your understanding of trust and love in ways nothing else can. If you've experienced something similar or know someone who has, please subscribe to this channel. Each week, I share true stories that might help you navigate life's unexpected challenges. I'm curious, have you ever had that moment when you realized someone close to you wasn't who you thought they were? That instant when the mask slips and you see their true intentions? Let me know in the comments below where you're watching from and if you've faced a similar awakening in your own life. These stories matter because they remind us we're not alone in our struggles. They teach us to recognize red flags we might otherwise ignore out of love or loyalty. Most importantly, they show us that even in our darkest moments, we can find strength we never knew we had. Thank you for giving me your time and attention today. Now, let me continue with how this painful chapter of my life unfolded. The year Daniel died, 2011, feels like another lifetime now. The economic downturn had already made our catering business precarious. We'd purchased our colonial-style home in the early 1990s as newlyweds, with dreams of filling it with children and laughter. Life had other plans. After several miscarriages, Justin became our miracle child and our only one. That house on Maple Street represented everything we'd worked for. 3 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and most importantly, a spacious kitchen I gradually upgraded as our business grew. The sunroom became my client meeting space. The dining room doubled as our tasting area, and the gardens occasionally hosted smaller events. In those early days after Daniel's passing, I wondered if we'd lose it all. The mortgage payments loomed like a shadow over every business decision. Justin was halfway through high school, with college on the horizon. Friends suggested selling, downsizing, starting fresh somewhere more affordable. I refused. This was Justin's childhood home, the place where his father's memory lived in every corner. I was determined to preserve this foundation for him, no matter the cost to myself. So I innovated. I approached upscale restaurants and convinced them to carry my signature desserts. I secured contracts with local businesses for their lunch deliveries. I networked at Chamber of Commerce meetings until my voice went hoarse, handing out business cards to anyone who would take one. Justin watched me transform from a grieving widow into a formidable businesswoman. At 16, he complained about helping with prep work on weekends, while his friends went to movies. By 18, he'd developed an appreciation for the business, even suggesting menu improvements that proved popular with our younger clients. Those years taught him resilience, or so I thought. He saw me negotiate with vendors, manage difficult employees, and handle unexpected crises with calm determination. When a bride's cake was destroyed in transit, he witnessed me recreate it in 3 frantic hours before the reception. When our delivery van broke down, he helped me load platters into my personal car to ensure a corporate lunch arrived on time. By the time Justin left for college to study marketing, Hall's premier events had established a solid reputation. I could finally breathe easier, knowing the mortgage payments were secure and his tuition covered. The 60-hour work weeks continued, but now they built our future rather than merely preventing disaster. I thought Justin had absorbed the lessons of those difficult years, that success requires sacrifice, that family supports each other through hardship, that integrity in business matters above all. I believed he understood the value of what we'd built together. How painfully wrong I was. The first hint of trouble came during Justin's senior year of college, when he brought Ashley home for Thanksgiving. Their connection was immediate and intense. Within 6 months, they were inseparable. By his graduation, they were discussing marriage. Ashley Jenkins waltzed into our lives like she belonged there. Tall, polished, with a marketing degree from the same university as Justin. She possessed a confidence that bordered on arrogance. I noticed how she assessed our home during that first visit, her eyes cataloging everything from the kitchen appliances to the antique furniture my grandmother had left me. "Your business must do very well," she commented, running her finger along the marble countertop I'd splurged on after landing the governor's holiday party contract. "Mom built it from nothing," Justin said proudly. "She's the reason I went into marketing. She's been doing it instinctively for years." "She's ambitious," Ashley added, smiling at me. "Like you." I should have recognized the calculation in those words. Instead, I felt flattered, hoping this sharp young woman might become the daughter I never had. When Justin proposed to her, just 11 months after their first date, I threw myself into planning their wedding reception with the same attention I gave to my highest-paying clients. The ceremony was beautiful. Standing beside my son as he began his new life, I felt Daniel's absence acutely, but took comfort in seeing Justin settled with someone who seemed to complement him perfectly. Ashley's family had money, but lacked warmth. I worked extra hard to welcome her, hoping to fill that gap. Their first year of marriage, they visited regularly for Sunday dinners. Ashley always arrived with questions that initially seemed like genuine interest in my life. "How's the retirement fund coming along, Rebecca? Have you considered what you'll do with this big house when you can't manage the stairs anymore? What's your exit strategy for the business?" I answered openly, explaining my plans to work another 10 years before gradually stepping back. I described the succession plan I'd developed with my most trusted employees. I shared my intention to eventually convert the ground floor of our home into a permanent office space. Ashley listened attentively, nodding at all the right moments. Later, I would recognize these conversations for what they were: reconnaissance missions. The changes happened gradually. Justin's Sunday visits became monthly, then quarterly. Our phone calls grew shorter, filled with excuses about work demands and social obligations. When they did visit, Ashley would point out maintenance issues around the house. "That banister seems loose, Rebecca. Dangerous for someone your age. Those kitchen floors get slippery when wet. My friend's mother fell and broke her hip on a floor like that." I dismissed these comments as awkward attempts at concern from someone without children of her own. I didn't realize she was building a narrative, creating a paper trail of an elderly mother unable to care for herself or her property. Then came the brochures for active adult communities, left casually on my coffee table after their visits. Photos of smiling gray-haired couples playing golf appeared in my mail, addressed to me, but clearly ordered by someone else. Ashley began mentioning friends whose parents had found new freedom by selling their family homes. They travel now, she would say. No maintenance worries, no property taxes. They look 10 years younger. Justin remained mostly quiet during these conversations, but I noticed how he avoided my eyes. His silence felt like betrayal, but I kept making excuses for him. He was busy building his career. Ashley was simply more practical than sentimental about living arrangements. I never imagined they were laying groundwork for something far more calculated than mere downsizing suggestions. I was still viewing them as family, while they were viewing me as an asset to be managed, and eventually liquidated. Winter turned to spring, and the distance between Justin and me expanded like the gap between seasonal frost and summer heat. Our conversations felt scripted, his laughter forced. Ashley's calls came more frequently than his, always centered around my health or the state of my home. Justin and I worry about you all alone in that big house, she would say, especially with your business keeping you so busy. My catering business had indeed grown even more successful. I'd landed contracts with 3 luxury hotel chains and expanded my staff to 20 full-time employees. The irony wasn't lost on me. The more I achieved professionally, the more Ashley implied I couldn't handle my life. One Tuesday in March, Ashley arrived unannounced at my office, carrying lunch just to check in. She questioned my assistant about my schedule, commenting on how demanding it must be for someone approaching retirement age. I was 54, with no intention of retiring anytime soon. That same week, I received a call from my family physician. Rebecca, my office shows you've requested your complete medical records be transferred. Is everything all right? I hadn't requested any transfer. When I called Justin to ask about it, he claimed Ashley was just helping me organize my healthcare information. It's important to have everything in one place, Mom. The explanation felt hollow, but I pushed my doubts aside. This was my son, the boy who'd cried at his father's funeral, clutching my hand as we faced an uncertain future together. Surely I was misinterpreting these events. Then came the incident with my business manager, Thomas. He'd handled my accounting for a decade, a loyal friend who'd helped me navigate the financial chaos after Daniel's death. Justin stopped by the office yesterday, Thomas mentioned during our monthly meeting. He had quite a few questions about your retirement accounts and the business valuation. My stomach tightened. What did you tell him? Thomas looked uncomfortable. Nothing specific without your authorization, of course. But he mentioned having power of attorney. I told him I'd need to see documentation. I assured Thomas no such document existed, but the conversation left me uneasy. That night, I went through my files, checking every paper I'd signed in recent months. Nothing seemed amiss, but the sense of wrongness grew stronger. April arrived, bringing my 55th birthday. Despite my reservations, I decided to host a family gathering, partly from tradition, partly from a desire to reconnect with my increasingly distant son. I spent days planning the menu, preparing my signature dishes alongside new recipes I thought Justin and Ashley might enjoy. The morning of the party, Justin called. "Mom will come early to help set up," he said, sounding more enthusiastic than he had in months. Ashley has some new decorations she thinks would look perfect in the dining room. When they arrived, Ashley immediately took charge, rearranging my carefully planned table settings while Justin brought in bags from their car. They seemed unusually attentive, insisting I relax while they handled the preparations. "We have something important to discuss after everyone leaves," Justin mentioned casually, pouring himself a scotch from Daniel's old crystal decanter. "Nothing to worry about, just some ideas for the future." The way Ashley's eyes flickered toward him made my skin prickle with apprehension. Guests began arriving at 4. My friend Megan, who'd stood beside me at Daniel's funeral and helped with Justin's college applications, noticed something off immediately. She cornered me in the kitchen while I was plating appetizers. "What's going on with those two?" she whispered, nodding toward Justin and Ashley. "They keep whispering and looking at your guests like they're evaluating them." I shrugged, unwilling to voice my growing concerns. "Probably just work stress. Justin's firm is pitching a major client next week." Megan didn't look convinced. "Rebecca, I've known that boy since he was 16. This isn't work stress. He looks calculating." Her observation sent a chill through me, but guests were waiting. I pushed the thought aside and returned to hosting duties, circulating with practiced ease among friends and family. Throughout the evening, I caught glimpses of Justin and Ashley in huddled conversations, their expressions shifting quickly whenever anyone approached. As twilight fell and guests began departing, I slipped into the kitchen for another bottle of wine. That's when I heard them through the partially open door to the dining room. "We've already got a buyer lined up," Ashley's voice carried clearly through the partially open door. "Once the paperwork is finalized next week, we can close quickly." I froze, wine bottle clutched against my chest, suddenly unable to move or breathe properly. "But what about your mom?" Justin's cousin Michael asked, his voice lowered but still audible. "What about her?" Justin replied, with an edge I'd never heard from my son before. "In our eyes, she's already dead. She just doesn't know it yet." The crystal flute in my other hand nearly slipped from my grasp. Each word struck like physical blows, leaving me dizzy with shock. Ashley laughed, a cold, hollow sound that would haunt my dreams for months afterward. "The retirement community is already paid for. 3 months, then we're free to travel. The business assets will fund our startup." My vision blurred as tears welled up, but I forced myself to remain silent. Some part of me, the businesswoman who'd survived countless negotiations, knew I needed to hear every detail of their scheme. "Won't she fight it?" Michael asked. "Aunt Rebecca built that business from nothing." "She signed everything we needed last month," Justin said dismissively. "She trusts me completely. That's her weakness. Always has been." "Besides," Ashley added, "we've been documenting her declining mental state for months. Her doctor's already concerned about early dementia symptoms. A lie. A complete fabrication. I'd had my annual physical 3 months ago and passed with flying colors. The business valuation came in even higher than we expected, Justin continued. Once we liquidate everything, we'll have more than enough capital to launch the agency and buy that vacation property in Aspen. My chest constricted so tightly, I struggled to draw breath. My own son, the boy I'd raised alone after his father died, the child I'd sacrificed everything for, had been systematically planning my professional and personal destruction. I must have made a sound because they suddenly went silent. Instinctively, I slipped out the side door into the garden, wine forgotten, my entire body trembling with shock and betrayal. The string lights I'd hung that morning twinkled mockingly above me as I gasped for air, leaning against an oak tree Daniel had planted when Justin was born. The cool evening air did nothing to clear my head as the reality crashed down upon me. My son, my only child, had written me off completely. Not just betrayed me, but erased me from his future while I still drew breath. For several minutes I couldn't move, couldn't think beyond the words replaying in my mind. In our eyes, she's already dead. Eventually, I spotted Megan saying goodbyes to departing guests at the front gate. I forced myself upright and walked toward her, each step requiring conscious effort. "Rebecca, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, gripping my elbow to steady me. "I need everyone gone. Now." Megan, my friend of 20 years, didn't ask questions. She saw something in my expression that spurred her to immediate action. Within 15 minutes, she'd engineered polite but firm goodbyes for every remaining guest. Only Justin, Ashley, and Michael remained inside. "Do you want me to stay?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "This is family business, but keep your phone on." When I re-entered the house, Justin and Ashley were in the living room with Michael, their faces composing quickly as I appeared. Michael looked uncomfortable, avoiding my gaze. "Party's over," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Everyone out, except you two." I pointed at my son and his wife. Michael practically fled, mumbling apologies and thanks as he rushed past me. After the door closed behind him, I turned to face the two people who had plotted my removal from my own life. "When were you going to tell me you'd sold my house?" I asked, my tone glacial. "And my business? Or were you planning to have me declared incompetent first?" The color drained from Justin's face. Ashley recovered more quickly, her expression shifting to concern with practiced ease. "Rebecca, you're obviously upset. Let's discuss this tomorrow when..." "When what, Ashley?" "When you've finished forging my signature. When you've emptied my accounts." Justin stepped forward, his hands raised placatingly. "Mom, you're overreacting. We're trying to help you. By declaring me dead while I'm still breathing." The words came out as a whisper, but they hit with the force of a shout. "I heard you, Justin. Every word." The pretense slipped then. Justin's face hardened into something unrecognizable, a mask of cold calculation where my son's expressions once lived. "You can't run this business forever," he said flatly. "You need to accept that. And you need to accept that this house and business belong to me." My voice grew stronger with each word. "Now get out." Ashley moved closer to Justin, her stance suddenly defensive. "You don't understand. The paperwork is already being processed. We have power of attorney." My blood turned to ice. "What are you talking about?" Justin reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out several folded documents. his movements deliberate and confident. You signed these last month, remember? When we brought over dinner and those forms for the new vendor contracts. The memory surfaced slowly. A pleasant evening at this very dining table. They'd arrived with my favorite meal, opened an expensive bottle of wine, chatted about business challenges while I signed a stack of papers. I'd been touched by their sudden interest, flattered by their attention after months of distance. You'll be comfortable in the retirement community, Ashley continued, her voice softening artificially. Everything's arranged. We've selected a lovely room with a garden view. I looked at the son I'd raised, searching desperately for any trace of the boy who once helped me knead bread dough at 5 a.m. before school. The child who'd cried in my arms when his father died. There was nothing there but cold, unfamiliar calculation. Get out, I repeated, my voice barely audible. Both of you, now. They didn't move. The three of us stood frozen in my living room, the home where I'd raised Justin, where we'd weathered grief together, where I'd taught him values I thought he'd absorbed. You need to listen to reason, Ashley said, her tone shifting from false concern to thinly veiled impatience. This isn't a request. The paperwork is legally binding. I extended my hand. Show me. Justin hesitated before handing over the documents. My hands shook slightly as I unfolded the papers, scanning the contents with growing horror. Power of attorney, healthcare proxy, authorization to manage my financial affairs, and my signature on every page. The signatures looked authentic, similar enough to my own handwriting that even I might have questioned them if I didn't know the truth. These weren't crude forgeries. They were expertly guided signatures. My hand led while distracted by conversation and wine. These aren't valid, I said, looking up at them. I never knowingly signed away my rights. It doesn't matter what you think you signed, Ashley replied coldly. The documents are legally executed. Your attorney has copies. So does your bank. My attorney? I felt another wave of betrayal. James Fisher had been my lawyer since before Justin was born. He expressed concerns about your memory lapses, Justin said smoothly, especially after that incident with the Miller wedding contract. There had been no incident with any Miller wedding contract. The fabrication was so blatant, I almost laughed. How long have you been planning this? I asked, my voice steadying as shock gave way to a strange, clear anger. That's not important, Justin replied. 18 months, Ashley interjected, clearly proud of their scheme. Ever since your business valuation came back. Do you have any idea what Hall's premier events is worth on the open market? I did know. I'd built it dollar by dollar, client by client. And the buyer, I pressed. Who's ready to take over my life's work? They exchanged glances. Crossfield Hospitality Group, Justin finally answered. They've been looking to expand their catering division. Crossfield, the same company that had tried to buy me out 5 years ago, offering half what the business was worth and planning to fire my loyal staff. I'd refused them then, and they'd retaliated by poaching some of my corporate clients. They'll dismantle everything, I said quietly. 20 years of building relationships, training staff, creating a reputation for quality, gone within 6 months. It's just business, Mom, Justin said dismissively. Nothing personal. The absurdity of his statement hit me like a physical blow. Nothing personal? They'd planned my professional execution and personal exile while sitting at my dinner table, eating food I'd prepared with my own hands. And the retirement community? I asked, forcing myself to continue this horrifying inventory of their betrayal. Where exactly am I being sent? Ashley brightened, clearly on comfortable ground. Whispering Pines. It's quite exclusive. We've secured you a studio apartment in the assisted living section. They have daily activities, 3 meals provided, and full-time nursing staff. I don't need nurses, I said flatly. I run 3 miles every morning and manage 20 employees and a 7-figure business. The evaluation from Dr. Winters suggests otherwise, Justin countered. I haven't seen Dr. Winters in years, I replied, my suspicion growing. My physician is Dr. Abernathy. Another exchanged glance between them confirmed my fears. They'd fabricated medical assessments along with everything else. This stops now, I said, moving toward the phone on the side table. I'm calling James, then the police. Justin moved faster, blocking my path. That would be unwise. The stress of a legal battle at your age, with your health concerns, the court would likely expedite our conservatorship petition. My health concerns? I repeated incredulously. Ashley pulled another document from her purse. Early onset dementia is nothing to be ashamed of, Rebecca. The assessments from Dr. Winters clearly indicate cognitive decline consistent with the early stages. Your recent business mistakes support his findings. What business mistakes? My voice rose, despite my efforts to remain calm. Hall's premier events had its most profitable quarter in 20 years. We just secured the convention center contract over 6 competing bids. That's part of the problem, Justin said, his tone patronizing. You're overextending yourself, taking unnecessary risks. The stress is accelerating your condition. In that moment, I realized the true horror of their plan. They hadn't just created documents. They'd constructed an entire alternate reality where I was failing, declining, incompetent. They'd built a paper trail designed to negate anything I might say in my defense. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think clearly through the shock and betrayal. Years of business negotiations had taught me when to press forward and when to strategically retreat. I need time to process this, I said, deliberately softening my voice and slumping my shoulders slightly. It's overwhelming. Justin and Ashley exchanged triumphant glances, clearly interpreting my apparent submission as victory. That's very reasonable, Ashley said soothingly. The transition to Whispering Pines isn't scheduled until next month. You'll have time to sort through personal belongings and say goodbye to friends. How generous of you, I murmured, watching their confidence grow with each word. And my business? My home? The closing is scheduled for 3 weeks from now, Justin explained, relaxing his guard now that I seemed compliant. We've arranged for a moving company to handle everything. You won't need to worry about any details. I nodded slowly, playing into their narrative. I see. And all my belongings? You can take personal items to Whispering Pines, Ashley said magnanimously. They allow residents to decorate their rooms with family photos and small furniture pieces. How thoughtful, I replied, noting how easily they divided my life into what could be liquidated and what could be contained in a studio apartment. We should go, Justin said to Ashley, checking his watch. It's late and Mom needs rest. The casual dismissal, as if they hadn't just revealed their plan to erase my existence, ignited something cold and hard within me. But I maintained my facade of stunned acceptance, even managing to nod weakly. "We'll call tomorrow to check on you," Ashley added, collecting her purse. "Maybe we can help you start sorting through things this weekend." I walked them to the door, playing the role of the compliant, overwhelmed mother they expected. Justin hesitated at the threshold, something flickering across his face. Regret? Doubt? Before Ashley tugged his arm. "Good night, Mom," he said stiffly. As the door closed behind them, I counted to 30, making sure they'd reached their car. Then I picked up the nearest object, a crystal vase Daniel had given me on our 10th anniversary, and hurled it against the wall with every ounce of strength I possessed. The shattering glass matched the broken pieces of my heart, my family, my trust. For several minutes, I stood motionless in my foyer, surrounded by fragments that could never be reassembled. Then I moved to the phone and dialed Megan's number with steady fingers. "They're gone," I said when she answered. "I need your help." "I'll be there in 15 minutes, she replied without hesitation. "Should I bring anything?" I considered the question carefully, my mind already shifting from shock to strategy. "A notebook, and if your son still practices law, his number." "Rebecca, what's happening?" "They're trying to steal everything, Megan. My business, my home, my independence. They've created documents, fake medical reports, everything needed to lock me away while they liquidate my life." Her sharp intake of breath carried through the phone. "Those monsters." "Yes," I agreed, a new clarity emerging through the pain. "But they've underestimated who they're dealing with." After ending the call, I walked through my home, the home Justin and Ashley had already mentally sold, touching door frames and furniture, reconnecting with the space that had witnessed my greatest joys and deepest sorrows. In my office, I opened the safe, hidden behind a family portrait, and removed my original will, business documents, and medical records. I spread them across my desk, creating a physical barrier against the lies Justin and Ashley had constructed. By the time Megan arrived, I had stopped crying. Grief would come later. Now was the time for action. That night was the lowest of my life, darker even than when Daniel died, because then I'd lost someone who loved me. Now I'd lost someone I loved to his own betrayal, a pain far more complex and devastating. But as Megan and I sat at my dining table, making lists and plans by lamplight, I felt something unexpected stirring within me, not just anger or determination, but a fierce, clarifying rage that would fuel what came next. They thought I was already dead. They were about to discover how very, very alive I could be. Morning found me hollow-eyed, but resolved. I hadn't slept. How could I? The words kept echoing. In our eyes, you're already dead. Megan had stayed until 2, helping me gather documents and craft a plan. Now, as sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, I faced the daunting task of discovering just how thoroughly Justin and Ashley had dismantled my life. My first call was to James Fisher, my attorney for over 30 years, the man who'd helped settle Daniel's estate and establish my business structure. "Rebecca," he answered, his voice oddly formal. "I was planning to call you this week. How are you feeling?" "Why don't you tell me how I'm feeling, James?" I replied. According to the documents my son showed me, I'm experiencing cognitive decline and memory issues. Silence stretched across the line. Justin expressed concern several weeks ago, he finally said. He brought documentation from your physician. Not my physician, I corrected. I haven't seen Dr. Winters since Justin was in high school. This was a carefully planned fraud, James, and you fell for it. Another uncomfortable pause. I should have verified directly with you. I apologize. Apologies won't fix this. I need copies of everything Justin filed, and I need them today. James agreed immediately, perhaps realizing he'd failed his professional duty. My next call was to my bank, where I discovered access to my accounts had been restricted, not completely blocked, but with new withdrawal limits and notification requirements. Mrs. Hall, these changes were authorized last month, the manager explained. You signed the paperwork yourself. During a dinner where I was deliberately distracted, I clarified. I need those restrictions lifted immediately. I'm afraid we'll need documentation proving fraud before we can reverse these changes. By my third call to Thomas, my business manager, the pattern became clear. Justin and Ashley had spent months systematically restricting my access to my own resources while creating a paper trail suggesting mental decline. He showed me power of attorney documents, Thomas confirmed. Rebecca, I questioned it, but everything looked legitimate. The notary seal, your signature. I assured Thomas I didn't blame him, though part of me wondered how no one had thought to contact me directly before accepting Justin's claims. At noon, a courier arrived with an envelope from Whispering Pines Senior Living. Inside was a glossy welcome packet, move-in instructions, and a floor plan of my luxury apartment, a 400-square-foot studio with a shared bathroom. My check-in date was scheduled for 2 weeks away. I spread the materials across my dining table, the same table where Justin and Ashley had tricked me into signing away my life. The brochure showed smiling elderly residents playing bingo and doing seated yoga. At 54, I ran 3 miles every morning and managed a staff of 20. This wasn't about my well-being. It was about warehousing me, somewhere I couldn't interfere with their plans. By evening, I understood the full extent of their scheme. They hadn't just prepared to steal my business and home. They'd created an entire fictitious narrative about my mental and physical decline, supported by falsified medical records and manipulated legal documents. As the sun set, I carried a glass of wine into my garden and sat watching the fading light paint the sky. The world looked exactly the same as yesterday, yet everything had changed. According to my only child, I had already lived too long. The doorbell's chime startled me from my thoughts. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment, fear gripped me. Had Justin returned to force the issue? I approached the front door cautiously, peering through the side light before opening it. On my porch stood Brian Ross, a widower who'd hired my company for his pharmaceutical firm's events for the past 5 years. We'd maintained a strictly professional relationship, despite occasional moments of chemistry neither of us had acted upon. Rebecca, he said, concern etching his features. I tried calling. Your assistant said you weren't taking meetings, which isn't like you. I almost sent him away, too raw for company. Instead, I found myself inviting him in, pouring us both a drink, and, to my own surprise, telling him everything. Brian listened without interruption, his expression darkening as I detailed Justin and Ashley's scheme. "They can't do this," he said finally. "It's not just unethical. Parts of it are illegal." "They're already doing it," I replied. "The documents look legitimate enough to cause problems. By the time I fight this legally, they'll have sold everything." Brian leaned forward, his eyes holding mine. "Then don't fight it legally. Not yet." "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said slowly, "sometimes you need to fight manipulation with manipulation." That conversation with Brian marked the turning point. As we sat in my living room that evening, the outlines of a counterattack began forming. Not the straightforward legal battle Justin and Ashley would expect, but something more strategic. Your son and his wife spent months creating a false narrative, Brian observed. "We need to understand exactly what they've done before we can dismantle it." The next morning, Brian arrived with Caroline Chen, a forensic accountant who specialized in fraud investigations. "I've seen similar patterns in family business disputes," Caroline explained, reviewing my financial documents. "The approach is always the same. Isolate, document concerns, establish control, then liquidate assets." Working from my dining room, Caroline traced the money trail, identifying exactly when and how Justin had begun positioning himself to take over my finances. The pattern stretched back 14 months, long before Ashley's concerns about my well-being had surfaced. "They created shadow accounts here and here," Caroline pointed out, highlighting transactions on her laptop. Money moving through these channels would fund their new business venture after liquidating your assets. Meanwhile, Brian introduced me to Michael Dawson, a retired detective turned private investigator. "We need evidence of their true intentions," Michael explained. "Right now, it's your word against their documented concerns about your health." Michael began surveillance, tracking Justin and Ashley's movements, conversations, and meetings. Within days, he discovered something unexpected. Ashley was having an affair with Tyler Grant, their business partner in the startup they planned to fund with my liquidated assets. "They meet 3 afternoons a week at the Westlake Hotel," Michael reported, showing me photos. "Based on their patterns, this has been happening for at least 6 months." The third member of our team was Emma Reyes, a digital security expert who recovered deleted emails and text messages from cloud backups Justin had forgotten to secure. "People think deleting messages removes them permanently," Emma explained as her programs reconstructed conversations. "They don't realize how much remains accessible if you know where to look." The recovered communications were damning. Emails between Justin, Ashley, and Tyler detailed their intentions in explicit terms. "Once we get the old lady settled in that retirement place, we'll have complete control of the business assets. The house alone should fund our first year of operations, even after paying off that doctor for the cognitive assessment. She trusts you completely. That's our advantage." Each discovery strengthened my resolve. These weren't impulse decisions made from concern. This was a calculated, long-term strategy to steal everything I'd built. "We have enough for criminal charges," Brian suggested after reviewing the evidence. I shook my head. "Not yet. Legal proceedings would take months, during which they could still sell my business. We need to stop them completely, not just punish them afterward." Our strategy evolved. While Justin and Ashley believed me broken and compliant, I would appear increasingly disoriented during limited interactions, playing into their narrative of my mental decline. Let them think they've won, Caroline advised. People make mistakes when they believe they've succeeded. When Justin called to check on me, I answered with slight confusion, asking repeated questions and trailing off mid-sentence. When Ashley stopped by unexpectedly, I greeted her wearing mismatched clothes, pretending to forget appointments and medication schedules they'd invented. She's deteriorating faster than we expected, I overheard Ashley telling Justin on a call Michael managed to record. We might need to move up the timeline. Exactly as we'd anticipated, they accelerated their plans. Justin called to suggest Sunday brunch to discuss next steps. I accepted immediately, my voice quavering appropriately. The day before our meeting, I gathered my team at Brian's home to finalize preparations. Tomorrow is critical, I told them. If Justin suspects I'm more aware than I'm letting on, he'll change tactics. Emma reviewed the recording devices we'd placed throughout my home. Michael confirmed the timeline for documenting Justin's arrival. Caroline prepared financial evidence showing exactly how they'd manipulated my accounts. Are you ready for this? Brian asked privately as the others packed up their equipment. I've been ready since the moment I heard my son declare me dead, I replied. Nobody writes me off while I'm still breathing. Sunday morning arrived with perfect fall weather. I dressed carefully in an outfit that suggested declining self-care, slightly rumpled, but not obvious enough to raise suspicion. When Justin arrived alone, I greeted him with vague cheerfulness. Mom, we need to finalize some paperwork before the move, he said, setting his briefcase on my dining table. Of course, I replied pleasantly. But first, let's have some coffee. I made your favorite coffee cake. Confusion flickered across his face at my calm demeanor. I'd been careful to appear increasingly disoriented during our limited interactions that week, playing into their narrative of my mental decline. Ashley couldn't make it, I asked, setting down 2 cups of coffee. She's finishing arrangements for your apartment, he said, not meeting my eyes. How thoughtful. And how is Tyler? Enjoying his new position? Justin's cup paused halfway to his lips. Tyler was their business partner and Ashley's lover. He's fine, Justin replied cautiously. Why do you ask? Just curious about the structure of your new venture, the one you're funding with my money. The cup clattered against its saucer. Mom, I've always wondered, I continued conversationally, at what point did you decide I was worth more dead than alive? Was it after Ashley came into the picture, or was this always your plan? That's not what. I called a family meeting, I interrupted. Everyone should be arriving shortly. Your aunts, uncles, cousins, Ashley and Tyler too, though I suspect they're together already. The doorbell rang as if on cue. Justin's face drained of color as he realized this wasn't proceeding according to his script. Within 30 minutes, my living room filled with extended family, including a visibly uncomfortable Ashley, who arrived separate from Tyler, but couldn't hide their furtive glances. Once everyone was seated, I stood before them, feeling a strange calm wash over me. The trapped, desperate woman of a week ago was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone who refused to be erased from her own life. Thank you all for coming, I began, meeting each person's eyes before finally settling on Justin and Ashley. I've gathered you because family matters should be addressed with family present, and I've recently discovered some family matters that require immediate attention. The room fell silent as I stood before my gathered family. Justin shifted uncomfortably in his seat, while Ashley maintained her practiced smile, though it now appeared strained around the edges. My son and daughter-in-law have decided I'm no longer capable of managing my affairs, I continued, my voice steady. They've arranged for me to be placed in a care facility while they sell my home and business. Murmurs rippled through the room. My brother David looked shocked, while my sister-in-law Patricia reached for my hand. Rebecca, is this true? My cousin Eleanor asked, glancing between Justin and me with confusion. Justin stood quickly. Mom has been struggling with memory issues. We're only trying to help her transition to a more manageable living situation. A transition I never requested or needed, I replied calmly. But rather than argue about my capabilities, I'd like to share some documents with everyone. I nodded to Brian, who distributed folders to each family member. These contain evidence of what's actually been happening over the past 18 months. What followed was a methodical presentation of everything we'd uncovered: the falsified power of attorney, the diverted business assets, the fabricated medical assessments from a doctor I hadn't seen in years. Page after page documented their systematic plan to eliminate me from my own life. This can't be real, my niece whispered, looking up from an email where Justin explicitly mentioned wanting to get this done before she realizes what's happening. The family's expressions shifted from confusion to horrified understanding as they reviewed the evidence. Ashley attempted to leave halfway through. My brother David quietly moved to block the door. There's more, I said, nodding to Brian again. He activated the television, which displayed footage from my garden security camera, installed after a break-in 2 years earlier. On screen, Justin spoke clearly to a potential buyer about the property. The current owner doesn't know we're selling yet, he said on the recording. But the paperwork's in process. We need to close quickly once she's moved out. The silence in the room became oppressive. Justin's face had turned ashen. Ashley stared fixedly at the floor. Tyler should be here any minute, I announced, checking my watch. I invited him separately. Ashley's head snapped up, panic flashing across her face. Why would you? The doorbell rang. Michael escorted Tyler in, his confusion evident as he took in the assembled family and the documents in their hands. His eyes locked with Ashley's in silent communication before quickly looking away, not quickly enough to escape notice. Now that everyone's here, I continued, I'd like to address what happens next. I slid 2 contracts across the coffee table toward Justin and Ashley. Option 1, you sign these documents relinquishing all claims to my property and business, return every penny diverted, and never contact me again. Option 2, I press charges for fraud, elder abuse, and theft. The police detective outside has everything needed to begin proceedings today. Your choice. The silence was absolute. Justin reached for a pen, his hand trembling slightly. You won't get away with this, Ashley hissed. I already have, I replied evenly. Just as you almost did. After they signed, I asked everyone except my closest family members to leave. Tyler fled without speaking to Ashley. Justin and Ashley departed separately, neither looking back as they walked out of my life. Once we were alone, my brother asked the question everyone was thinking. "What now, Becca?" I looked around the room at the faces of people who truly cared for me. Brian stood near the window, his presence a steady comfort throughout this ordeal. "Now, I keep living," I said simply, "on my terms." The following weeks brought painful but necessary changes. I sold the house, not because Justin wanted me to, but because it felt tainted by betrayal. A young family purchased it, their children already planning adventures in the garden where Justin once played. My business continued under my leadership, but I developed a proper succession plan with my most trusted employees. With Brian's encouragement, I explored new markets and services, expanding in ways I'd previously hesitated to attempt. Reports about Justin and Ashley filtered back through mutual acquaintances. Their relationship collapsed within months, fracturing under the weight of mutual blame and Ashley's ongoing affair with Tyler. Their business venture failed before it launched, investors pulling out after hearing whispers about questionable ethical practices. I received one letter from Justin 6 months later, a rambling mixture of justifications and half-formed apologies. I read it once, then filed it away without response. Some betrayals leave no room for reconciliation. The hardest part wasn't the legal aftermath or rebuilding my business safeguards. It was accepting that the son I'd raised, the child I'd sacrificed everything for, had viewed me as nothing more than an obstacle to his ambitions. That grief didn't diminish with time. It simply transformed into a different kind of pain, one I learned to carry without letting it define me. My relationship with Brian deepened gradually from friendship to something more meaningful. His unwavering support during my darkest hours revealed a strength of character I couldn't ignore. 6 months after the confrontation, we purchased adjoining properties overlooking the lake, renovating them into a shared home that belonged fully to both of us. No shadows of the past, no painful memories in its walls. On warm evenings, we sit on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the water in gold and crimson, our hands intertwined, discussing everything from business strategies to travel plans. Life doesn't end at 50, Brian often says. It just reveals who should remain in it. If my experience offers any wisdom, let it be this. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, even with family, especially with family. The warning signs were there for months. I simply refused to see them because they came from the person I loved most in the world. That emotional blindness nearly cost me everything. I learned that age often becomes a weapon used against us. The moment you hear phrases like "at your age" or "someone your age shouldn't," recognize them as attempts to diminish your agency. My business was thriving, my health excellent, yet they weaponized my birth date to create a narrative of decline. Protect yourself legally, no matter how much you trust your family. Review every document thoroughly before signing. Maintain separate relationships with your financial advisors, attorneys, and physicians. Create a network of professionals who answer directly to you, not your children or spouse. Most importantly, build connections outside your immediate family. Without Megan's friendship, Brian's expertise, and others willing to help, Justin's plan might have succeeded. When those closest to you betray your trust, you need allies who can see the situation clearly. Remember that your value doesn't diminish with age. Experience brings wisdom that youth lacks. I rebuilt my business after Daniel died, navigated economic downturns, and adapted to changing markets for 20 years. Yet Justin and Ashley viewed these achievements as irrelevant compared to their fresh marketing degrees and untested business plans. The most painful lesson was accepting that sometimes those who should love us the most see us only as obstacles to their ambitions. Justin watched me sacrifice everything to provide for him, then calculated how my existence interfered with his desires. That knowledge changes you forever. But here's the truth that saved me. Being declared dead by someone doesn't actually kill you. Their perception doesn't define your reality. When Justin said those words, "In our eyes, she's already dead," he thought he was writing my ending. Instead, he was simply removing himself from my story as it continued without him. And perhaps that's the greatest wisdom of all, learning that sometimes the people we must leave behind are the ones we once couldn't imagine living without. 6 months later, Brian and I sat on the terrace of my new home overlooking the lake, watching the sunset with intertwined fingers. The water reflected the evening sky in ripples of orange and purple, nature's reminder that beauty often follows darkness. "Any regrets?" Brian asked, his voice quiet against the backdrop of lapping waves. I considered the question carefully, watching a pair of herons glide across the water's surface. I regret not seeing them clearly sooner. I regret the years wasted loving someone who saw me as a resource rather than a mother. I turned to face him, but I don't regret fighting back. He squeezed my hand. To new beginnings. I raised my glass. And to remembering that sometimes the best revenge isn't just surviving, it's thriving despite those who wished you gone. The truth is, the pain hasn't disappeared entirely. I don't think it ever will. The empty chair at holidays, the absence of phone calls, the grandchildren I may never meet. These losses create a hollow space that nothing else can fill. Yet alongside that, pain grows something stronger, the knowledge that I refused to disappear when expected to. My new home contains no mementos of Justin, no photos, no childhood artwork, no physical reminders of the son who declared me dead while I still drew breath. That chapter closed the day he signed away his claims to my life and business. Instead, my walls display photographs of new adventures. Brian and I hiking mountain trails, celebrating business milestones with my loyal staff, enjoying dinners with friends who stood beside me when I needed them most. At 55, I've discovered that life offers second chances in unexpected forms. My business has expanded into event planning for luxury retirement communities, helping other women my age celebrate milestones society often suggests we shouldn't acknowledge. Each client reminds me that age brings possibilities, not limitations. When people ask if I miss my old life, I answer truthfully. I miss who I thought my family was. I miss the son I believed I raised. But this new chapter, written entirely in my own hand, contains joys I never anticipated and strength I didn't know I possessed. If my story resonated with you today, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps these stories reach others who might need to hear them, people facing family betrayal or struggling to stand firm when loved ones try to diminish their worth. I'd love to know if you've ever had to confront someone who underestimated you because of your age, gender, or circumstances. How did you respond? What strength did you discover within yourself during that challenge? Share your experiences in the comments below. This channel exists to remind us that life's most painful chapters often contain our greatest opportunities for growth. Each story we share carries lessons hard-won through experience, wisdom that might help light someone else's path through darkness. If you know someone facing family conflict or questioning their value in the eyes of those who should cherish them, please share this video. Your simple act of sharing might give them the courage to fight for their dignity and future. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember that your worth isn't determined by others' limited vision of you. It's revealed in how you rise when they expect you to fall. I'll return tomorrow with another true story of courage, resilience, and unexpected transformation.